You're listening to Penguin Classics On Air.
This program is brought to you by Penguin Classics, publisher of A Death in the Family, the classic American novel republished for the 100th anniversary of James Agee's birth. This Penguin Classics edition includes a new introduction by acclaimed singer-songwriter Steve Earle. A Death in the Family, now available from Penguin Classics.
Welcome back to Penguin Classics On Air.
Next up on our program, I'll be speaking with Paul Norlen, the translator of the Saga of Gosta Berling. The grandson of Swedish immigrants, Paul has taught in the Department of Scandinavian Studies at the University of Washington in Seattle, where he lives, and is the president of Swedish translators in North America. I know that you're the grandson of Swedish immigrants, and I wanted to hear from you a little bit about what your grandparents, what kind of regard your grandparents might have had for Selma Lagerlöf.
Well, I don't even think they were very familiar with her.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Most of the immigrants from Sweden, were working class people. Selma Lagerlöf comes from a different social class, and but she was known and highly regarded within the Swedish community, say 100 years ago, because I've noticed that the Swedish language newspapers, often would print stories by her or, serialize some of her novels. So she was known in this country in Swedish among that community. But, a lot of the people, like my grandfather was a farmer, and, he didn't read literature, or he read Swedish newspapers and things, but I don't know that that certainly never came up in conversation between us.
All right, well then, tell me how you came to Selma Lagerlöf.
Well, anybody who gets interested in Swedish literature is going to encounter Selma Lagerlöf. I mean, she is one of the major figures in Swedish literature, and so you're going to read her, and I've always found her intriguing from the very beginning. I think I must have read a little bit of Gösta Berling's Saga of Gosta Berling when I first started learning Swedish, which wasn't until I was in my late 20s, and because I found a little notebook where I'd written down words that I didn't know, and they were from Gosta Berling. So Selma Lagerlöf is always kind of there in the background, if nothing else, and I probably got more seriously interested in her, 10 or 15 years ago, and in terms of thinking about the fact that being such a major figure in Swedish literature, why wasn't she better known in the English-speaking world? And that's something that has puzzled a lot of people. And started thinking about, the idea of translating one of her books. The first idea wasn't Gosta Berling at all. It was a different one. Then a couple years ago, when I started thinking about this again more seriously, it seemed like the place to start would be with that first novel, Saga of Gosta Berling, which is the one that's the most well-known and the one that virtually, I think, any Swedish person would know about if they haven't read it themselves.
I think you said you were in Sweden a few months ago. Is that right?
Yes.
So, and you brought with you the news that this new translation would be coming out. How was that received?
Very enthusiastically, really. There's been a perception both among people who know Selma Lagerlöf's work in this country and then also in Sweden that the existing translations have been inadequate, and they're all very old now, and her standing isn't what it really should be. So they were very enthusiastic. They said, "Oh, finally, somebody's doing that." And I visited Selma Lagerlöf's home, Mårbacka, while I was there, and they were very excited to hear about this new translation.
Does that resemble the ironworks estate at the heart of the Saga of Gosta Berling?
The novel is set in that region where she grew up, and her home, which was her childhood home as well, probably more resembles one of the farms or that she refers to in one of the little shorter chapters, Lilia Krona's home. It really is. She's probably modeled in that little chapter his little estate based on her childhood home, Mårbacka, which is actually a fairly good-sized place, and it's set out in the middle of the plain there, and with the fields all around it.
So her childhood home is still there.
It is, yes. It's considerably different. The story is that after her father's death, he left the farm in considerable debt, and so they had to sell the place. But once she became successful as a writer, one of the first things she did was to buy that back, and then also to buy back quite a bit of the land around it. And then she expanded the house quite a bit. So it was a very typical. I don't know if a manor house wouldn't be quite the way to put it, but definitely the sort of home that you would see in rural Sweden in that part of the country. And then she expanded it, and now it's preserved as a tourist attraction that you can visit.
There's this kind of Selma Lagerlöf homestead where people can. It's something of a museum now.
It is, yeah, and it gets lots of visitors. In fact, that even started when she was still alive. She was aware of the fact that it would be a tourist attraction, and they get thousands of visitors every year.
Do you know if Greta Garbo ever visited her when she was there?
I'm not sure if she ever went out to Mårbacka. I think they did meet, though, once.
So Mårbacka is pretty remote.
It's fairly remote. When I went from the nearest small town, it was about a 20-minute taxi ride out there. But it's very rural. It's a rural estate.
What about Strindberg, say? Where was he based? Was he more of an urban?
Yeah, he was based more in Stockholm when he wasn't in Germany or Paris. And he didn't really care too much for Selma Lagerlöf. Very different temperaments there.